mistakes and the challenges which I've gone through. And also, I want to call out at the start that this is just as applicable to individual contributors, to designers or product people or engineers in teams, as it is to people who are managing. But imagine yourself in a company where you've found product market fit, you've got one or two squads, and you need to start to grow. You need to start to put more capability into your product and what it is that you're building. And that's really what it's about. Anywhere from a couple of teams, how do we scale that up? How do we get ourselves able to grow our team so that we can then grow our product and we can help more people with whatever it is that we are trying to do. So, first question I want you to answer when you come to this is, why is it working? Why have you found that product market fit? You found your users, you found that bit of success. Who is it that's making those important product calls? Could be a senior designer, could be a founder, could be any member of the team. It could be the whole team together. It could be a very collective effort. But it's really important that you need to understand why, or at least have a theory, why are you winning? Because the most important thing is that you don't then fuck with it. Whatever that core thing is that's the reason for your winning, if that's a very product-thinking founder or a critical member of the design team or whatever that might be, the question is, can you scale it? Could you add more teams? Could you add more people without breaking that thing, whatever it is? Usually a human or a group of humans. And if the answer is yes, then you've got your answer about how to scale. Find ways to be more efficient with that team's time. Find a way to get things out of their way. However, if the answer is no, then we can move on to the next step. But I think it's always important to step back and say, do I actually need to change things? Do I actually need to do anything differently to how we were working before? So I think there's three things to start off with. First of all, diagnose what is going to stop you, what isn't working. What are the challenges that you cannot scale? Second thing is, you've got to figure out how you're going to fix that. One of the biggest mistakes that I've made, and I've seen and heard a lot of companies make, is adding more people, scaling when you haven't got your core right. When you bring new people in, no matter how many people they are, they adapt to the team that is there today. And if that team isn't being successful today, for whatever reason, chances are your new people are going to pick that up and start to operate in that way as well. So you've got to have something working for you to scale. And the third thing is be realistic. If you are a small startup with a very sort of product-led mindset and mentality across the senior team, you can go in a lot of different directions. If you are a small incubator within a large corporate, you're going to have a very different environment to scale, and there's probably some things you won't be able to do. Be realistic about what you can do. Be realistic about the change that you need to make and ask yourself the honest question, can we make it? You'll be much more successful if you set your constraints and your boundaries based on what you think the organization will actually be able to do. Don't be afraid to go and ask some senior people or some long-time people who've been there, do you think we could get away with this? Do you think we could do this? How might we make this happen? Because if you do that and you get a good signal or a bad signal, that's a really good yardstick. So let's talk a little bit more about diagnosis. Here are some sort of measurements which you can ask either yourself about how you're working, or about your team, or about the whole of your product organization, if you want to. And what they're really there to do is to understand which aspects are working and which aspects are not. And you might want to tailor these sorts of questions to your specific situation, your specific organization. But use them as a way to have conversations with each other. Use them as a way to understand why might this team be working? Why might this team not be? Why do I have this friction with my product manager? Or why are engineering and design sort of feeling as though they're throwing things over the wall to each other and they're not really collaborating? Get into that sort of honest diagnosis mode. And you can do that at any level. You can do that yourself as an individual PM or designer or engineer within a team. You can do that as a head of across multiple teams. You can do that as a C-suite person working with the whole of the product organization. And from that, try and figure out what are those core challenges. I promise there's not that many frameworks in my talk today, but I do want to highlight this one because I think it's really useful for this sort of stage. The very first section there, sort of that crisis of leadership, grow through creativity, and then grow through direction, tends to be that early startup stage. That's where your founder is very hands-on. That's where whoever is really making all those big product decisions is really hands-on and directing, and you might have a bit more of a delivery culture in some areas, or you might have just a much more collaborative culture because you can scale it. You know, that one or two or three people can work across a couple of squads, and the CEO or founder can do the CEO job as well as that sort of product thinking, product direction sort of job. But generally, it breaks down here, where you start to get past that scale and the direction starts to break down because there's not enough time available, is generally the thing. Humans can only scale so much. And so you might have, let's say you have a founder who's the real product thinker early on, who's very able to be that director at that early stage. But as you get bigger, I mean, they might have to go and do a fundraising round. They might have to go and do, well, the day job. And that means their amount of time with the team will be much more limited. So you might just not have that context. The team just doesn't understand why this person is telling them to do this thing or whatever it might be. That's where things tend to break down. So what I'm going to do now is just talk through some of those biggest areas that I see breaking down, which I don't think tend to be in books or frameworks or whatever it is, but this is just my lived experience of where you might find these problems. First issue is confidence. You've got a team, and they might be new to the business, they might be very old, but something is changing. They used to maybe be one of maybe two product teams. Now they're one of 5 or 6. The amount of time they had with leadership has gone from hours a week to minutes a week. And you tend to get quotes like this in my experience. We can't commit, we're not ready yet, we haven't done enough discovery, we don't all agree, we're going for consensus, we're going for all of these sorts of things. So my one guidance to you all is figure out where on the scale you need to be between sort of full Marty Kagan complete autonomy in this sort of ideal world and micromanagement, crazy boss from hell. There's a lot of space in between those two extremes. I think people tend to think of that as binary, as either I'm going to tell you what to do or I'm going to leave you completely alone. And I would really recommend you figure out where it is on that spectrum that the team needs to be. So basically, if the team isn't confident, you need to be. You need to provide the environment or the confidence through demonstration to allow the team to make decisions and move forwards. How you do that will depend on the situation and who you are and where you're at. If you are a member of the team in this sort of zone and you feel yourself, as a team, you're stuck, you just keep going around, you feel unable to make the decision, I'd really recommend you try and step up. You try to provide that confidence yourself, or you try to shine a light on it and get somebody to help you do that. If this is a team that's working for you or next to you or with you or whatever that situation might be, it doesn't have to be micromanagement. Have they got a clear strategy? Have you been able to give them the context that they need? Do they feel permission to fail? Whatever these different things are, how can you provide it in a way that helps that confidence, that allows them to take the next step forwards? Because that is really, really important. I often see that confidence gap be the primary reason that stuff doesn't move. The second issue is something I'm going to call product sense. And Chris was talking this morning, actually, I really liked his talk. He was talking about the famous Bezos quote of, do we own the process or does the process own us? And I think that's spot on. A lot of the time when I see something that doesn't look great, I'll dig into it with the team and I'll ask the team, well, what do you think? Do you believe in this? And the first answer I get is, well, we did a design sprint, we did all these things, we went through the process, we turned the handle on this process engine, and this is the idea that popped out, and so this is what we're going to deliver. And then you ask them again, and you say, but what do you think? Is that a good solution? Do you really believe that that is going to work to solve that user problem? And sometimes when you push on that, you get people step back and they're like, not really. It could be better. There's a problem here, and I'm not sure about that, and whatever it might be. And I think there's a bit of a problem with a lot of the frameworks, a lot of the approaches that are sort of like, if you go through the process, good stuff comes out. And that's not true. You need teams with product sense. And you don't need every single person in that team to have super strong product sense, but as a whole, you need the right blend of people. You need a couple of people in there who've really got this strong product sense. This is my favorite quote on it, from Mika at Figma, which she basically defined product sense as user empathy plus creativity plus experience. The good thing is most of this develops with time. It's not a case of you're born with it. You develop it. It's a skill, but you can work on. And so if you or the team or whoever it is isn't really coming up with those solutions, you're just not feeling it, I'd recommend thinking about which of these areas, which of these three things might be lacking. The experience one basically just comes with time, but you can hire that in. Everything else I think you can develop. If you want to know more about this one, Lenny's podcast with Mihika is very, very good on this topic. I would recommend it. In fact, if you're not subscribed to Lenny's podcast, I recommend you do that anyway. So the third thing, I mentioned this in the confidence, is velocity. And I think you need confidence for velocity, but you also need a mindset for velocity. And I think there are good examples of just this can't do attitude, which sometimes creeps in, and it can be infectious. And you need to think about how you deal with this at every step. We can't do it because we're blocked from another team. Or I've got all this other stuff in my calendar which is taking up this time. What you need to do is think about where you or other people are on this spectrum. Are you a full-on pirate, or are you the worker bee, the drone in the cube farm in the office? Now, you probably don't want either end of that spectrum. You definitely don't want either end of that spectrum. The pirate is just going to break things. The pirate is probably not going to do things in the right way, ethically. They're going to burn bridges behind them. The worker bee is just going to be heads down, ship the code, not really caring about that stuff, perhaps overly bureaucratic, overly political, whatever that might be. You want to be somewhere in the middle. And where in the middle depends on what that team is working on. If it's a growth team who are all about experimentation and moving fast and moving those metrics, you want a bit more of the pirate. If it's a platform team, you want a bit more on the worker bee end of the spectrum. But everybody needs a bit of pirate in them, and everybody needs a little bit of that worker bee in them. So when you're thinking about who you hire, how you have that team set up, trying to diagnose the challenges about why scaling isn't working, why having the impact from the team isn't working, I'd really recommend thinking about where people are on that spectrum. My second favorite quote of the day from Paul Allen, the CPO at Intercom: "Fast gets good faster than good gets fast." Basically, speed is a quality all by itself. If you can move fast, build momentum, get things done, you're going to learn. And as you learn, you're going to get better. And it's much, much easier to move fast and figure out what is working and what isn't than to try to be perfect. And there's lots of aspects in that, but I really think speed is important. But speed without direction is nothing. Speed by itself can be spinning wheels, it can be just going in any old direction. You really need velocity. So you want a team that has the ability to move fast, that has the confidence, that has the right team makeup, but also they know where they're going. So is the strategy understood? Is everyone bought in the team and around the team, in whatever it is that they need? Are you comfortable with the ambiguity in whatever space that you're in? And that lack of comfort in ambiguity can really slow you down. It's that tyranny of choice. When you have no strategy and you have no clear KPI that you're trying to move, and you have no real understanding about really why are your users doing what they're doing, what are their core underlying needs, what are the problems you're trying to solve for them, pretty much anything could be the right answer. And so you've got this infinite choice problem. So if you're in a team and you feel any of these things are triggering, don't be afraid to ask for direction. Don't be afraid to ask for these things, because your job in the team is to be successful, is to have that impact, is to solve those user problems. And if you need outside help to solve them, then great. I mean, that's not a problem. The primary thing you're there to do is to solve those problems. Equally, if you're outside the team and you see some of this happening, I'd recommend that you're not afraid to give a little bit of direction and see if that helps. Get a little bit more involved. Ask some questions. See if you can help by being a bit more hands-on or a bit more practical. That doesn't mean micromanagement, but it doesn't mean telling them the answer. But it might mean unsticking them from a particular spot or situation or whatever it is that they're in. So how does that all come together? I think you've got to hire the right people. It's absolutely critical. You've got to understand whether you want the pirates or not for that particular role. Do you need somebody with like super high product sense, or is the team already indexing really well on that, and so you can get somebody perhaps who has a bit less experience but is really keen and a bit of a high potential? Really understand who you need in that team. On a team-by-team basis, think about each of the members of their team. Is it complementary? Is it all set up? Sometimes you might need to move people between teams just to find that right blend of people, because personality clashes happen, and that's okay. And nobody's necessarily fucking it up there, but it's something that you've got to deal with. I would always bias to mindset over hard experience. Somebody with the right mindset who's got that right blend of fuck it, let's try it, pirate, with really understanding the platform requirements or the whether you're about to create an absolute world of pain in tech debt, is really important. So think about that mindset as you go. And all of that comes down to active management. Active management, if you're in the team, is about asking yourselves, are we succeeding? And asking those difficult questions of yourself and of your coworkers, how are we doing? How do we really think we are doing? What are we missing? What are we lacking to be successful? And asking that question is half the problem. And if you get there, you're in a good spot. If you're managing these teams, then it's really about giving the teams feedback, letting them know where they stand. How do you feel they're performing? It might be a difficult conversation, but it's a very important conversation for you to have with a team of, yes, lots of hard work, we love what you're doing, but we're not making progress. Let's talk about why we're not making progress. And often when you break the ice on a topic like that, you find there's a good conversation behind it, where the team actually feels relieved. And it's like, yeah, you're right. We weren't feeling good. We do have these problems. Let's see how we can work together to fix it. So sometimes it's not just about working on the product itself. It's about working on the product team to allow you to solve those problems. So basically, it all comes down to the right people. And there's no right or wrong answer for what the right people are. It's about your company. It's about the team. It's about the problem you're trying to solve. It's about the experience that you need or who is currently in the team. Are people motivated? Do they feel able to be creative? Creativity involves a bunch of failure. Have you got the right ability for people to fail, to allow them to really flex those creative muscles? And are you solving those impactful user problems? Do people understand what that is? Have you got support for them? Is the strategy clear? Is the user understanding clear? All those pieces. If you bring all that together, I think you can deal with your confidence problems. I think you can deal with challenges in terms of scaling, for instance, being able to step away from a founder leading a set of questions or whatever it might be. So, I think if you tick those 3 boxes, I think you're in a good spot. And it's not about a framework. It's not about this magic formula of autonomous teams or using the SAFe framework or whatever it might be. It's about the right people in the right place, doing the right things. Thank you. That's me.
Thank you very much, Matt. I love the storytelling. Super, super clear. Okay, we have some questions here for you. Speed can cost quality. How to mitigate that, Matt?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's a completely subjective answer. There's no perfect balance here. There's no perfect formula. First of all, I think you've got to ask that question. You've actually got to be able to say, well, what is the quality that we're trading off here? And you need to be able to make a call about, is that an acceptable level? So I think the best way of doing that is probably to have a minimum quality bar, to really understand where that quality bar is, and for the senior team to be able to help an individual team hold to that bar, to say, whoa, okay, slow down, or you know what, that's an acceptable thing, and that's part of that decision-making and confidence, which I think you can bring to a team. If you don't have an idea about the minimum quality standards at the moment, I think that's worth investing in your team. Where do you want that bar to be? Feature parity across platforms, for instance, is one of those common ones. Where are you willing to accept? What's your QA approach? All these sorts of things all contribute into quality. But I'd recommend having that sort of set of principles about quality almost before you get into each individual trade-off. It'll save you a lot of time.
Great. Next question. Why do you think mindset will beat the experience?
Because I think with the right mindset, you can solve pretty much any problem which is thrown at you being either you individually or collectively as the team. Because whatever level you need to get to, you can at least go down to first principles and then build back up from it in the way that you are then wanting to do. Experience is a shortcut for that. So experience is great if you've got it. But experience with the wrong mindset won't work. So some of those quotes that I had there, particularly the ones around velocity of, oh, well, we're blocked by this team, or the ticket wasn't clear, and so we're going to bump it to the next sprint, or whatever that is. That's mindset. That's either a can-do or a can't-do mindset. And those might be super senior people or super experienced people who are saying those things. And that's going to massively slow you down. And in the right company, in the right situation, the right structure, that will be fine. In others, it won't be. So what's the mindset that you want for your team? And I would always say that is non-negotiable. You need that mindset to be understood across the board.
Okay. The problem with speed is the good enough mindset. Instead of improving the good enough product, a lot of organizations just move on to the next good enough product.
I love that.
What's your take on this?
It's 100% right. It's that. I think companies that do that or teams that do that, it tends to be this sort of feature mindset of, right, we've built this thing, right, what's the next thing? And it's like tick boxes on a SaaS feature comparison sort of thing. Yeah. If you're building a SaaS product and you haven't found product market fit and you're in a particular situation where sales have committed to a bunch of stuff, yeah, maybe that's the right thing to do. But good enough isn't about shipping a feature. It's about, have you really deeply solved that user problem? And are you seeing that flow through in however you're measuring it? That could be anything from something like NPS or CSAT all the way through to something big like LTV or CAC or whatever it might be. And so I think as a team, you can really control that by focusing on what's that user problem and how you're measuring it. And if you haven't made that difference yet, don't move on. You've shipped a thing, but it's only just good enough. And so we haven't had that impact. We're not seeing whatever it might be. It's not meeting our quality bar. It's not whatever it is. So again, it comes back to that mindset. It comes back to those sorts of things. But I very much recognize that anti-pattern. It's a nasty place to be. But I think that's really about influencing up and trying to get that sort of set of agreements, set of principles in the team of, this is what we mean by done. Done isn't shipped to the thing. Done is we've solved the problem and we understand what's happening there.
Okay, final question for you. This people first mindset. How do you learn to hire exactly the right people at the right place?
Yeah.
It's tricky.
Yeah, hiring is hard. Hiring is really hard. It's taken me a long time to get even passable at it. Some people are absolute naturals. So one thing I would say is if you've got people who are just really good at hiring, lean on that. Really get them involved. Get them hiring as many people as possible. Get them to be teaching others and training others how to do it. Another good way is to sit in on good interviews in inverted commas, I would say. But I think stepping back from that, which might be the thing behind the question, is what is right? is essentially what it's about. And that generally isn't, oh, we need another front-end engineer, or we need another PM, or whatever it is. And so, right, where's our PM job spec? Dust that off. It's about thinking about what right means. Yes, you might have a PM with a set of experience, number of years, number of whatever, or whatever that might be, but where do you want them on that pirate worker bee spectrum? Answer questions like that to allow you to filter for that. And then think about your hiring process. Does it allow you to get into that? Do you have your best people doing the hiring? Because your best people are probably the best at sniffing out other great people.
Great. Round of applause for Matt. Thank you very much.
Thank you.